The morning sun cast long shadows across the research facility's sprawling campus, a stark contrast to the electric excitement brewing inside its walls. Jay Park stood by the large glass window, her reflection barely visible against the bright landscape. At 34, she wasn't just another engineer. She was a dreamer with calloused hands and a mind that refused to accept limitations. Growing up in a small town near Busan, Jay had always been different. While other kids played traditional games, she would spend hours dismantling old radios, understanding how each component worked. Her father, a local mechanic, would watch her with a mixture of pride and confusion. "Some people are born to follow paths," he'd say, "and some are born to create them." Those words echoed in her mind as she reviewed the latest batch of research documents. The team's current project wasn't just another scientific experiment. It was a potential revolution in space exploration. Traditional methods had always suggested that interstellar travel was centuries away, but Jay and her team believed differently. The research facility wasn't some sterile, cold environment. It buzzed with human energy, coffee machines humming, passionate discussions erupting spontaneously, whiteboards covered in complex equations mixed with random doodles. Young researchers from diverse backgrounds shared a common dream to push humanity's boundaries beyond what anyone thought possible. Jay's team was unique. They weren't just brilliant scientists, they were storytellers of potential futures. Hyun, their quantum physicist, would often joke that they were cosmic dream weavers instead of researchers. Their approach wasn't about cold, calculated science, but about human imagination and resilience. The current project focused on developing a quantum propulsion system that could compress space-time. Most colleagues considered it impossible, but Jay saw it differently. Every great discovery in human history started with someone being told something was impossible. She remembered her grandmother's stories about surviving the Korean War, tales of resilience, hope, and unexpected miracles. Those stories had taught her that human potential wasn't defined by current limitations, but by the courage to imagine beyond them. The team's diverse backgrounds played a crucial role. Sue, their strategic planner, brought diplomatic skills. Wu, the chief engineer, had an almost magical ability to transform complex theoretical concepts into practical designs. Each team member brought not just technical skills, but personal stories of struggle and triumph. Their current prototype wasn't just a technological marvel, it was a testament to human collaboration. Components were sourced globally, designed by minds from different continents, united by a single vision. It represented more than scientific advancement. It symbolized humanity's collective potential. Jay walked across the research floor, stopping occasionally to discuss details with her colleagues. Her leadership wasn't about hierarchical control, but about creating an environment where every idea was valued. She believed that breakthrough moments often came from unexpected conversations, from that magical intersection of different perspectives. The quantum propulsion project was their moonshot, a seemingly impossible goal that would require reimagining everything they knew about space travel. Traditional approaches suggested incremental improvements, but Jay's team wanted a fundamental transformation. As afternoon light filtered through the windows, casting warm tones across the research floor, Jay felt a familiar surge of excitement. This wasn't just about creating a new technology. This was about telling a story of human potential, about showing the world that limitations were often just illusions we create for ourselves. Her team wasn't just working on a scientific project. They were writing a new chapter in human exploration, proving that with passion, collaboration, and an unwavering belief in possibility, humanity could indeed reach for the stars. The spark of defiance wasn't just in their research, it was in their collective spirit, in their shared belief that the next great human adventure was just beginning. Would you like me to continue with the next part in a similar engaging and human-centric style? Part 2. Breaking Theoretical Barriers. The research lab felt different that morning. Something electric hung in the air, a mixture of anticipation and nervous excitement. Hyun Kim stood before a complex array of quantum simulation screens, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces like a musician playing an invisible instrument. Most people would see a jumble of numbers and complex equations. Hyun saw stories, mathematical narratives that explained the universe's deepest secrets. He wasn't just a physicist. He was a storyteller who spoke the language of the cosmos. His journey hadn't been smooth. Growing up in a small apartment in Seoul, Hyun was the kid other children called weird, always lost in thought, always asking questions that made adults uncomfortable. His mother, a high school mathematics teacher, recognized his potential early. "Questions are windows," she would tell him, "not walls." Those words became his life's philosophy. While other researchers followed established paths, Hyun was constantly exploring theoretical landscapes that seemed impossible. His current project challenged everything conventional science believed about space-time manipulation. The quantum propulsion concept wasn't just a technical challenge, it was a human dream of breaking boundaries. Imagine compressing space, reducing astronomical distances to mere moments of travel. It sounded like science fiction, but Hyun believed science fiction was just reality waiting to be discovered. His team wasn't composed of typical researchers. They were dreamers, rebels and believers. Min, the computational expert, could transform complex mathematical models into visual representations that made seemingly abstract concepts tangible. Yoon, their experimental physicist, had a knack for turning theoretical possibilities into practical experiments. Weeks of continuous research had led to this moment. Their latest simulation showed something unprecedented, a potential method to manipulate spacetime's fundamental structure. Traditional physics suggested this was impossible, but their data told a different story. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. During a late-night discussion over instant noodles and energy drinks, Hyun and Min discovered a unique quantum entanglement pattern that could theoretically compress space-time. It wasn't just a mathematical curiosity, it was a potential revolution in human understanding of space travel. Their approach was collaborative and human-centered. No ego, no competition, just pure scientific curiosity. They shared everything, challenged each other's assumptions, and celebrated small victories together. Science for them wasn't about individual achievements but collective human progress. The research facility buzzed with controlled chaos, whiteboards filled with complex equations, coffee machines worked overtime, and passionate discussions erupted spontaneously. This wasn't a sterile scientific environment, it was a human playground of possibilities. Hyun remembered his grandfather's stories about Korean inventors and explorers who changed the world against incredible odds. Those stories weren't just family history, they were inspirational blueprints of human potential. Every great discovery started with someone believing something was possible when everyone else said it wasn't. Their quantum propulsion concept wasn't just a technical solution, it represented human hope. Hope that we could explore beyond our current limitations, that human imagination could transform seemingly impossible dreams into reality. The team understood the emotional journey of scientific discovery. It wasn't just about data and equations, it was about human passion, persistence, and the incredible ability to dream beyond current understanding. As evening approached and soft lights illuminated the research floor, Hyun looked at his team. They weren't just colleagues, they were co-adventurers in a journey of human discovery. Each person brought not just technical skills, but personal stories of struggle, hope, and relentless curiosity. The theoretical barriers they were breaking weren't just scientific, they were psychological. They were proving that human potential was limited only by our imagination and collective belief. Their quantum propulsion research was more than a project. It was a declaration, a statement that human beings, when united by a common dream, could achieve the extraordinary. Would you like me to proceed with the next part in a similar engaging and human-centric narrative style? Part 3. Global Collaboration and Resistance. The global scientific community wasn't ready for a revolution. When Soo Park first presented their quantum propulsion research at the International Scientific Conference in Geneva, the initial response was a mixture of skepticism, disbelief, and outright ridicule. Sue wasn't just a researcher, she was a strategic mastermind. Standing 5'4" with eyes that could pierce through the most stubborn academic defenses, she had a unique ability to transform complex scientific concepts into compelling narratives. Her presentation wasn't a typical technical lecture, it was a human story of possibility. Growing up in a small coastal town, Sue had learned early that changing minds wasn't about overwhelming people with data, but about connecting with their emotions and dreams. Her father, a local fisherman, had taught her that understanding people was more important than being right. The initial resistance was brutal. Established research institutions labeled their work as scientific fantasy. Major funding organizations withdrew support. Government research departments sent detailed rejection letters explaining why their concept was mathematically impossible. But Sue and her team understood that resistance was part of any significant breakthrough. They had studied history, how revolutionary ideas were always met with initial rejection. The Wright brothers were called dreamers before they made humans fly. Einstein's theories were ridiculed before they transformed our understanding of physics. Their strategy was brilliant. Instead of fighting the resistance, they embraced it. They began publishing detailed research papers, creating open-source documentation, and inviting global scrutiny. Transparency became their most powerful weapon. The team realized that global collaboration was their true strength. They started connecting with independent researchers, innovative universities, and forward-thinking technology companies worldwide. Their network wasn't just scientific, it was a human movement. Young researchers from different continents began joining their cause. A programmer from Brazil, a theoretical physicist from India, a materials engineer from South Africa. They formed a global community united by a single dream. Their online platforms became spaces of passionate discussion where geographical boundaries dissolved. Funding became their next challenge. Traditional research grants were unavailable, but they discovered alternative paths. Tech entrepreneurs who believed in radical innovation started supporting their work. Crowdfunding campaigns attracted thousands of supporters who saw their project as more than a scientific experiment. It was a symbol of human potential. Social media played a crucial role. Short video explanations, interactive graphics, and personal stories about their research journey began attracting global attention. They weren't just presenting scientific data, they were telling a human story of dreams and determination. The resistance wasn't just external. Internal conflicts and personal doubts created their own challenges. Team members sometimes questioned the feasibility of their project. Late-night discussions often turned into emotional conversations about hope, failure, and human resilience. J. Park's leadership became critical during these moments. She wasn't just a project leader, she was an emotional anchor. She understood that scientific breakthroughs weren't just about technical solutions, but about maintaining human spirit and collective belief. Their approach was unconventional. While traditional research teams worked in isolation, they created a transparent, collaborative environment. Every challenge, every small victory was shared globally. Their research platform became a living, breathing ecosystem of human creativity. Government agencies started paying attention. What began as a dismissed research project was slowly transforming into a potential technological breakthrough. Intelligence agencies, space research departments, and innovative technology firms began showing genuine interest. The global scientific community was slowly changing. Their persistent approach, combined with compelling data and human storytelling, was breaking traditional research barriers. They weren't just challenging scientific limitations, they were redefining how scientific innovation could work. As months passed, their movement grew. It wasn't just about quantum propulsion anymore. It had become a global narrative of human potential, collaboration, and the incredible power of collective imagination. Sue Park would often remind her team, "We're not just researchers. We're storytellers of human possibility." And their story was just beginning. Would you like me to continue with the next part in a similar engaging and human-centric narrative style? Part 4. The Prototype and First Tests. The prototype spacecraft looked nothing like traditional rocket designs. Sleek, almost organic in its curves, Horizon's promise represented years of collective human imagination and relentless innovation. Wu Li, the chief engineer, stood beside the craft, his hands trembling slightly, with a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. This wasn't just a machine, it was a testament to human potential, a physical representation of countless dreams, sleepless nights, and unwavering belief. Every component told a story. Each circuit, each panel a result of global collaboration that defied traditional scientific boundaries. Wu's journey to this moment was anything but straightforward. As a child, he had been diagnosed with a learning disability that made traditional education challenging. But what others saw as a limitation, he transformed into a unique perspective. While other engineers followed established patterns, Wu could visualize complex systems in ways nobody else could. The team had spent months preparing for this moment. Countless simulations, thousands of computer models, and hundreds of potential scenarios had been analyzed, but nothing could fully prepare them for the actual test. The quantum propulsion system they had developed challenged everything known about space travel. Their testing facility wasn't a typical government-funded research center. It was a collaborative space that felt more like a creative workshop than a scientific laboratory. Whiteboards covered with complex equations stood alongside artwork and inspirational quotes. Coffee machines worked overtime, and the air buzzed, with a combination of nervous energy and hope. The first test wasn't about proving something to the world. It was about proving something to themselves, that human imagination could truly transform the impossible into reality. Jay Park watched the preparations with a calm that masked her internal excitement. She understood that this moment was bigger than their individual careers. This was about human potential, about pushing the boundaries of what humanity could achieve. The global scientific community was watching. Live streams, international news channels, and millions of online viewers were tuned in. But for the team, it wasn't about the audience. It was about the dream they had been chasing. Preparation was meticulous. Every team member had a specific role, but they moved like a single organism. Hyun monitored quantum calculations, Min managed complex computational models, and Sue ensured every communication channel was perfectly coordinated. As launch time approached, the facility fell into a strange silence. It wasn't the silence of tension, but of collective anticipation. Each team member carried years of hope, years of work, years of believing in something most considered impossible. The first test would be unmanned, a critical decision that demonstrated their scientific caution. Traditional space agencies would take months to prepare such a launch. Their team did it in weeks, driven by a combination of technological innovation and human passion. Final checks completed. Systems synchronized. The quantum propulsion drive hummed with a subtle energy that seemed to defy conventional physics. Wu's hands moved across control panels with a grace that spoke of countless practice hours. Initiate sequence, Jay's voice cut through the silence. The next few moments would define everything they had worked for. Years of research, global collaboration, personal sacrifices, everything culminated in this single moment. The spacecraft didn't roar to life like traditional rockets. It seemed to shimmer, to fold into itself, challenging fundamental understanding of space and movement. Sensors began picking up unprecedented data, readings that would take years to fully comprehend. Something extraordinary was happening. The EU boundaries between scientific possibility and human imagination were blurring. As initial test data started streaming in, the team realized they hadn't just created a new technology. They had opened a doorway to a new understanding of human potential. Their prototype wasn't just a spacecraft, it was a promise that human beings could continue to dream, to explore, to push beyond known limitations. The first test was complete, but their real journey was just beginning. Would you like me to proceed with the final part of the narrative? Part 5. Redefining Human Potential. The world changed on an ordinary Tuesday morning. News stations struggled to find words to describe what had happened. Scientists scrambled to understand the data. But for Jay Park and her team, it was the culmination of a journey that began with a simple belief that human potential knows no boundaries. The successful test of Horizon's promise wasn't just a technological breakthrough. It was a moment that would be remembered like the first moon landing or the invention of the internet. But this was different. This wasn't about conquering space. This was about reimagining human possibility. Jay remembered the moment the first results came in. The laboratory fell silent, then erupted into a mix of tears, laughter, and disbelief. They had done something that generations of scientists had deemed impossible. The quantum propulsion system had not just worked, it had exceeded every mathematical prediction. News spread rapidly. Social media exploded with discussions, scientific forums crashed under unprecedented traffic, and universities worldwide began reassessing their research priorities. But for the team, the real magic was in the human stories that began to unfold. Young students who had been told their dreams were too big suddenly found inspiration. A teenager in a small village in India watched the broadcast and realized that geographical limitations were just illusions. A retired engineer in Brazil saw hope for humanity's future. Their breakthrough wasn't just scientific, it was deeply human. The global response was unprecedented. Countries that had previously been scientific rivals began collaborative discussions. Funding that was once locked in competitive silos now flowed towards collaborative research. The team had inadvertently created something more powerful than a technological breakthrough. They had created a new way of thinking. Hyun Kim found himself giving interviews, not just about the technical details, but about the human journey behind the discovery. He spoke about failure, about persistence, about believing in dreams that seemed impossible. His story became a beacon of hope for young researchers worldwide. Their success challenged everything. Traditional space exploration models became obsolete. Overnight, what once seemed like a century-long dream was now a tangible reality. Interstellar exploration was no longer a distant possibility. It was becoming a practical next step for humanity. The team's diversity became their greatest strength. They represented a global human story, not just a scientific achievement. A programmer from Brazil, a physicist from Korea, a materials expert from South Africa, they had proven that human potential transcends geographical and cultural boundaries. Funding began pouring in from unexpected sources. Tech entrepreneurs, government agencies, and private research institutions all wanted to be part of this new human narrative. But the team remained committed to their original vision: open collaboration and transparent research. Sue Park became a global speaker, sharing not just the technical details but the human story behind the breakthrough. Her presentations were less about scientific jargon and more about human dreams and collective potential. She became a symbol of how passionate collaboration could transform the impossible into reality. The impact went beyond scientific circles. Schools began redesigning curriculum, emphasizing creativity and collaborative problem-solving. Young students started seeing science not as a collection of facts, but as a creative journey of human imagination. Wu Li, the chief engineer, found himself mentoring young researchers who saw him as more than a scientist, as a symbol of human resilience. His personal story of overcoming learning challenges became an inspiration for students who felt different or overlooked. Their breakthrough wasn't just about quantum propulsion. It was a reminder that human potential is limitless when people unite with a common dream. It showed that scientific innovation is deeply human, driven by curiosity, passion, and an unwavering belief in possibility. As months passed, the initial excitement transformed into systematic research and exploration. But the core message remained the same. Humans are capable of extraordinary things when they believe, collaborate, and refuse to accept artificial limitations. The Horizon's promise wasn't just a spacecraft. It was a mirror reflecting humanity's most profound capability, the ability to dream, to challenge, to transform the impossible into reality. Their story was just beginning, and the entire world was watching, waiting, hoping. Would you like me to provide any additional context or modifications to the narrative?